We all know that over time, comic book characters tend to face changes, whether it be the way they look or the abilities they possess. But some change quite a bit more than others. And since we've already covered the heroes that have changed the most, here are the top 10 villains you wouldn't recognize in 2022. But before we get into today's video, I just wanted to quickly tell you about our super cool sponsor, Mad Cave. The first installment of Mad Cave Studios' critically acclaimed medieval noir Nottingham has returned in hardcover format. Limited to only 500 copies, this hardcover edition of Nottingham Volume 1 includes an exclusive bookplate signed by author David Hazan and artist Shane Connery-Volk. This limited release collects issues number 1 to 5 of Nottingham Volume 1, Death and Taxes, along with collected back matter and a noir edition of issue number 1. In this twisted medieval noir, the Sheriff of Nottingham hunts a serial killer with a penchant for tax collectors. This sheriff's investigation makes him the target of England's most nefarious power brokers. And after finding some telling evidence at one of the more gruesome crime scenes, members of the royal family start to come into question as the perpetrators of these crimes. It's a really cool read that adds a dark, gory spin on the medieval setting of the story of Robin Hood and his merry men, and the world that surrounds them. You're not going to want to miss out on this amazing offer. You can get 10% off your Nottingham order when you use Top 10 Nerd at checkout. That's Top 10 Nerd, all one word, at checkout. Or grab a copy in just a few days at San Diego Comic-Con. Thank you again, Mad Cave, for sponsoring this video. At number 10 is Despero. Although Despero has always been totally jacked, he was originally known as more of a threat to the Justice League through mind manipulation. During the Silver Age, he would only typically use his telepathic powers before anything else, but these days, it's a different story. Although these changes did start to take place way back in the 80s, the character has come a long way since the days when he would sit on his throne and twiddle his fingers most of the time. Now, he seems to do a lot of the grunt work himself, even looking larger in size these days than ever before. And even outside of the comics, Despero's appearance in the Arrowverse offers a totally different look into the villain. He takes on a human form for much of the time, who is, well, let's just say he's not as big as Despero, nor does he have much musculature to him, no offense to that actor. Nor does he have a third eye or anything that a comic book fan would expect, and when he's in proper form, he just seems a lot less demonic and cunning, more like Hellboy's very serious detective older brother, or something like that. At number 9, we have Anton Arcane. The penultimate villain to Swamp Thing, Anton Arcane has always been a threat as one of the most prolific evil scientists in all of DC. But when Swamp Thing finally kills Anton during one of their many confrontations, back in 2016 I think, the villain goes to hell and basically becomes a demon. Having been a pretty tame foe for most of the Swamp Thing comics, Anton Arcane's physical changes have made him almost unrecognizable now that he's a demon. And what's worse is that he continues to bother Swamp Thing and his niece Abigail, but now with the added demonic powers in mind. So he's changed quite a bit, both in looks and power set. At number 8, we have Psycho Pirate. The way that this villain has changed since the Infinite Crisis event is unmatched. Although he looks relatively the same, he's gained such a power boost that he now works with the likes of Darkseid and Alexander Luthor. After surviving the crisis, he comes out on top, getting his hands on what's known as the Medusa Mask. And what this helps him do is basically summon beings from the old multiverse, which, as you can imagine, is a very powerful ability, especially directly following the event itself. And even though he's been killed by Black Adam during the events of Blackest Night, Psycho Pirate's corpse is brought back to life as a Black Lantern. And as you can imagine, this gives him a whole new look and increases his power level. He loses the Medusa Mask in this ghoulish form, but even without it, he appears totally different than how we're used to seeing him. At number 7, we have Doomsday. The primary change with Doomsday isn't something that's been gained, but something that's been lost. A very notable power of his, actually, and that is his hyper adaptability. In fact, I would even argue that this was his main power, and what it meant was he could learn from past losses in battle and change his physiology to prevent himself from being killed in the same way twice. I don't know why this has been dropped, because aside from it being the defining characteristic of Doomsday, it was just a really fun ability to watch because it made every encounter with the villain a new challenge for the heroes, which would ultimately make for an exciting read. But for whatever reason, this power has basically been left in the dust, making Doomsday that much less unique from any other bruiser type villain, at least in my opinion. At number 6 we have Dr. Octopus. Something that the less avid readers may not know about this villain is that he's been going back and forth between heroism and villainy for some time now. And not only that, Otto Octavius has recently taken on the mantle of Spider-Man, donning the superior Spider-Man armor outfitted with the mechanical arms and everything. He's also been taken over by Venom recently, as well as the Carnage symbiote. Although he's known to be back to his evil ways and his classic suit in 2022, there is no telling if he'll jump back into the Spidey suit once more. He's already gone back and forth a number of times, even in the last few years, so I wouldn't be surprised if he did it again. At number 5 is the Green Goblin, aka Norman Osborn. As if this villain wasn't enough of a contender for Spidey to deal with before, he actually takes on the Carnage symbiote, turning him into the Red Goblin, as mentioned before. This makes him nearly unstoppable, forcing the good guys to employ anti-venom on him in order to take him out for good. And even though he has since gone back to being the Green Goblin, the character takes another turn that makes him unrecognizable from his past self during the events of Kindred Rising. And by unrecognizable, I mean that he's now working with Spider-Man. When Sin Eater cleanses Norman of his sins, his allegiances change and he becomes a hero. At number 4 we have Dr. Doom. These days, Dr. Doom has taken on some pretty unstoppable powers that some would even describe as being godlike. Big fans of Victor Von Doom might have expected him to reach a point like this at some point because of his insatiable hunger for power, but as of 2022, he's already surpassed at least my expectations of what he was capable of. Although they haven't stuck around until the time that we're posting this, he has taken the powers of the Silver Surfer and even the Beyonder, giving him a whole new mantle of God Emperor Doom during the Secret Wars storyline. Just for scale, this gave Dr. Doom the ability to piece together broken pieces of the universe after the multiversal collapse. And that's a pretty crazy glow up if you ask me. And even if he doesn't hold quite that much power these days, having had that ability has changed the character forever, if you ask me. At number 3 is Darkseid. Originally introduced as a nearly unstoppable supervillain and one of the most powerful in the whole DC universe, Darkseid's powers have been dumbed down quite a bit since then. Although he appears the same, his immense power level just isn't the same these days as it always was. For example, his eye beams were originally meant to kill his targets in one hit, but these days, they don't by any means take out their targets in one hit. He used to be almost unbeatable, but it seems like heroes are making easier work of him than ever as of late. This is probably a result of him appearing more often in the comics, because if he'd kept his same unstoppable status, his appearances would have to be regulated, or else our heroes would be out of commission in the blink of an eye. At number 2 is AntiMonitor. Another case of a villain getting nerfed. AntiMonitor's gotten it bad these days. If you thought Darkseid got taken down a notch, just think how much room there would be to do the same with AntiMonitor, because he is, after all, the most powerful being in the DC multiverse. Just to get an idea of what I mean, back in the day, AntiMonitor takes out multiple universes alone before he reaches ours, and then once he does, it takes a hell of a lot to take him down. In fact, it became one of the most notable moments in all of the DC comics when they did, because it was so difficult. But when he returns from his defeat and joins the Sinestro Corps, he just seems to be in a totally different echelon of power, a lesser one, to the point where the Justice League can take him out on their own these days, which is just weird to see for fans who knew his power level back in the day. At number 1 is the Batman Who Laughs. Enough with the downgrades, because this guy's change is a glow up if I've ever seen one. These days, the Batman Who Laughs has gained so much power that he's known to be basically godlike, and he finds these new powers in the place that he comes from, the Dark Multiverse. After finding a Dr. Manhattan powered Batman in the Dark Multiverse, the Batman Who Laughs gets his mind transferred into the body of that hero, acquiring the greater part of Dr. Manhattan's abilities, but with the sinister touch of his usual self as well. The only way that he's able to be taken down is when Wonder Woman finds a way to match his power level herself and defeats him despite his insane power boost. Okay, that was the list for today. Thanks for watching. Remember to like and subscribe if you haven't already, and comment if you think I missed any entries for the list. I always do my best to reply to you guys down there, so let's have a chat. This has been Top 10 Nerd, and I've been your host, Ben Ball. You know the rest.